All right, hey, we're back. We're going to finish the other half of Nietzsche's Assorted Opinions and Maxims, which is in volume two of Human All Too Human today. And it's just, it's like we talked about last time. I think this text is so layered. It's so woven together at so many different levels. It's really tough to talk about this in a way that's going to satisfy me anyway. Like, I don't know. I keep going back to the text and I keep finding more and more, and I find how things connect with other things. And I found myself this week going back to volume one of Human All Too Human and kind of contextualizing some of the stuff in volume two with volume one.
And they really do go together.
Oh yeah. So I guess let's just set the bar low for this one. Don't expect us to cover everything or even most things. This time, let's just talk about some of the things we pulled out, some of the things we thought were interesting in our reading this week, which by no means, I mean, I have a whole list of things that I was looking at and that I'd like to look at more. And definitely will be into the future, but let's just take a look at just a couple of the things that we focused on this week.
No, okay. I just want to ask you a question then, and maybe get this thing started. Like, I reread the preface again, and it's interesting.
The one written in 1886.
Yes, yeah, I think this is in his preface.
Yeah.
I think he called these books his traveling books. What do you think he means by that?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think I have an idea.
Interesting. Like, does it mean like he's traveling? Oh, wow. I don't know. Traveling out of an older way of thinking into a newer one?
I think it kind of mixes in with this idea that he brings up in the second half of free-ranging spirits. Remember, he says that he's better to call the new man a kind of a free-ranging spirit, in that he doesn't stay locked into one place for a long time. He'll travel among many ways of thinking, many ways of seeing, many ways of viewing, and in that way become a better, bigger whole, right? Isn't this the way he's talking about? It seems a major part of this book is this vision of life.
Oh, wow. I couldn't agree more on that, actually. Yeah. Okay. When you put it that way, I'm in agreement on that.
And in that spirit, I think we should talk about this book as a whole and the second part of this book. But it's very interesting where we left off. 179 and 180. We didn't talk about them last time.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't going to fit well with what we were saying. But they're very important passages, both of them. 180 is Nietzsche's vision of what society should be like.
Yeah.
What society should be like in a world without God. I mean, he says as much too. In 179, he talks about how we now have the possibility of reaching out and doing these things without supernatural assistance. And in 180, he lays out his vision for the new world. And maybe it's just worth repeating a little bit. This is Nietzsche's vision. This is where he's going to be, I guess, the most blunt and honest. He says, lectures and hours of meditation for adults, for the mature and maturest, and these daily, without compulsion, but attended by everyone as a command of custom. The churches as the worthiest venues for them, because they're richest in memories. Every day, as it were, a festival of attained and attainable dignity of human reason. Talks about the priest, the artist, the physician, the man of knowledge, and the man of wisdom, all fused into one, with a fusion of their separate virtues into a single total virtue that can be expressed in their teaching itself. It's kind of almost, I don't know, scholarly world in which everything that's been separated, everything that's been specialized is brought back together into a more unified whole that doesn't see things only from one perspective. A man that can play on many strings. This is what he wants to see in the future, right? He sees this beautiful vision in the future. And this is important because Nietzsche repeatedly says, when you know someone's ideal, you know them most of all. This is their deepest point. I don't know. I like this vision. What do you think of Nietzsche's vision of the future? Or his one?
Oh, I love that section a lot. I would like to live in that world, actually.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing. I mean, I couldn't be more behind a vision like that too.
I
And
mean, this,
we talked about like specialization with Ortega and stuff too,
yeah,
uh, and what effects that has like on people and on their opinions and how they start to get more and more skewed in their opinions by lack of generalization.
yeah. Basically, it's the inability to see. I don't know. The more you specialize, the more you're able to act quicker and faster. But the less you're able to integrate that into your life and your life into a bigger whole. And that's going to be the ultimate point of what wisdom is the ability to integrate yourself into a whole, a story, a long story. And this sounds very much like Hegel, but it's Nietzsche. This is the outline right, where he's had right here,
Yes,
which is
yes,
interesting. Um, so I don't know. I really like 179 and 180. It starts this new section off with a good tone, right? And now, but it immediately goes into depressing things, right? Well, it's like, well, why can't this happen? The next passage is about, well, this can't happen because we have no good teachers, and this line is just killer to me as a teacher. I guess it hurts most of all when he says they themselves are not educated. How should they be able to educate? It's painful. Maybe as a parent too. Maybe you can feel it a little bit.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. It, it's something that weighs on me quite a bit actually. A lot of the things running through this book actually just thinking as a parent too like they worried me um about I don't know like let me break into some of the stuff I was thinking about and how it also relates exactly to what you were saying.
Mm,
So I don't know about you but like one section that I from our first reading that we didn't talk about but it stuck with me in that it seemed odd. It seemed odd for Nietzsche to be saying it. It just seemed odd in general. I think Nietzsche was trying to be a little bit contrarian when he said it. It's section 75 of the first part of Assorted Opinions and Maxim, and the title is Love and Duality. And he says, what is love but understanding and rejoicing at the fact that another lives, feels, and acts in a way different from
mm.
and opposite to ours?
I like that one.
I like this one a lot. And at first, but it strikes you a little bit. You're kind of like, what? What? Really? Like you love someone because they're different from you? But like I thought about this one more and more and more, and it really fit well with the whole. I kind of spun it out into deeper and deeper parts of the whole theme of the book in general. I mean, it reminds me a lot of somebody like who like somebody might object to say, well, no, you want somebody who has similar values to you, somebody who shares similar interests to you. That's who you want to love. But I mean, if we just took like my wife or whatever, and if I just insisted that she share all of her opinions with me and share her outlook on life with me, I don't, would you call that love? I don't know. It seems kind of a little skewed if it's any kind of love. So I think this is the point Nietzsche's getting at here, like that love. I mean, although Nietzsche's view on love evolves and gets different, and especially romantic love in the gay science and stuff, he really evolves his view on that a little bit. But I think he wants to say something like love kind of it it needs a respect for the otherness of the other, right? And if you want to quash that otherness of the other, then that's not really love. Um, so like, and it's kind of interesting when you take this with some of the opinions of like people in the beginning of the book or in the middle of the book,
Yeah.
and he says like how young people kind of alternate between love and hate and love and hate. They're either all love them or just hate them. And like a Nietzsche's diagnosis of these people is something like they just kind of love themselves or they love what they see in other people of themselves a little bit. Um, But
Yeah, I mean, to make it a more, I don't know, more pedantic kind of thing, but you can see this when people talk about things they used to like when they were a kid, right? I
yeah,
mean, once they, for example, I was never into this, but Pokemon or something,
okay,
right? The way that young adults dealt with Pokemon when they were a kid, they loved it. When they were kind of teenagers and angsty, they started to hate it.
yeah,
And then when they were an adult again, they started to love it again. And now it's on Reddit all the time. Now,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
something I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about Pokemon, but it kind of it's more to do with their feelings about who they are,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, even like on, especially in a place like this, YouTube, I just like YouTube commenters, right? It's kind of like the kind of the people who write, like they watch a video and they're like, "That's what I was thinking." Subscribed, but then the
Yeah.
second somebody says something they don't like, I hate you. Unsubscribed. I don't have to put up with this. Unsubscribed. Right. This is this same thing. Like basically, we got to be all on track, or that's it. You're gone. Goodbye. You got to be my little ego boost here, or you're my enemy. That's it. You're just my enemy.
Yeah,
And
it's sadly prevalent on YouTube.
so, I mean, well, I don't know where am I going with this though. I think the payoff of this though is at the end of that section 75, where Nietzsche he makes this really interesting remark at the end, where he says, not only for love of other people, but self-love. Self-love also requires this kind of strange dualism, in a sense. Like self-love is respecting the otherness of yourself, right? It would be looking at yourself and seeing in you that, like, maybe I want to, I don't know, I want to do something, I want to go on a diet, but there's a part of me that wants a cheeseburger, right? And seeing that other part of me is in there too, and not going in there with a machine gun to quash it, right? The self-love would be somehow being able to look at that desire and still respect it in a way. Still be able to somehow deal with it, not let it run you. Of course, that's not what he's saying at all. But he is saying like self-love would require you finding a place for it.
I mean, isn't it also interesting in the same way that when people talk about their quote embarrassing hobbies or whatever, in the same way as they grow older, they're more comfortable with revealing their faults.
Yeah. Yes.
They grow comfortable with themselves, and they can let it be known, for example, that they're afraid of horror films or something, and it doesn't bother them as much because they have a much more rounded and multifaceted personality. And in other words, they've learned to accept and love who they are, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Instead of like this kind of fight against the terrible parts of themselves. So
I mean, maybe they've begun to see the value in even the negative parts.
Right? Exactly right. Yeah, and I kind of, in a way, I think this hovers around the territory Nietzsche's trying to scope out a little bit. He's trying to, I think, in this part of this book, what you said, like volume 1 and volume 2 fit together, and I really think they do too. I think volume 2, especially Assorted Opinions and Maxims, is also meditating on being a free spirit. Like, and what are the things that keep us from being a free spirit? What are the things that make our, what he described in first volume, make us kind of fettered spirits, that we limit ourselves, that we become, remember that really great section in the first volume where he talked about how, like, in the fettered spirits want you to be a repetition.
Yeah.
Like you just repeat. You're just a repeat. Like if your father was a farmer, you're a farmer, and your son's going to be a farmer, and that's it. Repeat, 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 repeat. You'll never be anything different. You just get in this system of repetition. And maybe how some of this forms. I don't know. Like what I found really interesting in some of this was like perhaps how some of this forms was through this inability to unite, well, not unite, or this inability to deal with both of these parts of yourself.
The multifaceted.
And this inability to deal with the fact that you are divided, the fact that you are split in some of your desires, that lead you down this path of trying to eliminate or destroy them. I thought, like, as I was reading this, like, Hoffer came back to me quite a bit. There's a section in Hoffer section 60 of The True Believer. He says, only the individual who has come to terms with his self can have a dispassionate attitude toward the world. Once the harmony of the self is upset and a man is impelled to reject, renounce, distrust, or forget his self, he turns into a highly reactive entity. Like an unstable chemical radical, he hungers to combine with whoever comes within his reach. He cannot stand apart, posed, and self-sufficient, but has to attach himself wholeheartedly to one side or another. This guy really fits in with the kind of person Nietzsche is describing.
I like how I use the chemical metaphor the same way.
Exactly. He used the chemical metaphor. He talked about like when we talked about last week about people just it has to be on my side. Everything. It's all everything or nothing. It's this same type of character who is, through his self-hatred, it is starting to kind of attack the world.
I mean, to put it in a crazy extreme way, I mean, isn't this in a crazy way saying appreciate the evil?
Yes, it
appreciate
is really
the evil.
Yeah.
Or you could say the bad parts of the world.
Yeah.
For they serve a purpose too.
Yes. That's what I really liked about, and there's a section, I can't remember what is it. He talks about like what did the Greeks do? He talked about the Greek city-state.
Yes.
And he said, I think he was really down with the Greeks did. He said they kind of found a space for these bad desires, for these bad drives. 220. Yeah.
The real paganism.
Yeah, yeah. He said, like, of course, like they didn't dominate Greek life by any means, right? He didn't think they should, but they did respect them enough to give them an outlet.
Right. This reminded me of some of the debates. I'm sorry to bring it back to this, but I mean, with the video games and Anita Sarkeesian in the video that we had put up there on our channel about play and the significance of play, but how like it's not always a danger to play as the bad guy, right? How being able to fantasize about being Darth Vader or a criminal is not a bad thing as long as it's contained within that structure of what you call the play. As long as that's a contained fantasy, it's something that we can use to even power the good within us. Actually, I mean, we can use those fantasies to help us better see our dark side of who we are. Right? It can light up the dark constellations of our soul.
Yeah.
Much like Nietzsche said in the first part of this.
Yeah, I mean, and like to be straight up, like Nietzsche. I mean, in the first volume, he just says straight out, basically, what is good in you is sublimated evil, right?
Yeah.
So, like, your quest to destroy this evil would end up destroying you. It would end up destroying your ability to do good. So, again, yeah, I think this pursuit, right? I loved in the sections too, in this second half where he talked about how kind of people who do this, who go on this pursuit of destroying these things instead of finding some kind of way to shape them into life, where he talked about fighting against stupidity. Fighting against stupidity. He says, the fight against stupidity. This is 362. He says, the fight against stupidity in the long run makes even the fairest and gentlest men brutal. Yes. I think that's a great section. I don't know. I just like he said, he says, perhaps this means they are on the right path to their own self-defense. For the just argument against a stupid head is a clenched fist. Kind of reminded me of the beginning of the Republic, though, where Socrates is walking along and Polemarchus comes up and Socrates is like, well, what if I don't go with you? And Polemarchus is like, well, there's more of us. So what are you going to do? But I get it. I really get what Nietzsche's after here. I mean, you get more and more violent. You cannot get through to some of these people. And it just wears down on you, and it makes you less harmonious and more willing to resort to not so wonderful tactics.
It kind of makes you brutal. I mean, that's passage 183 too.
Yeah,
Do not be a
exactly.
warrior of culture if you don't have to be.
Yes.
I mean, and a war with stupidity makes you brutal and stupid. It will. I've seen it happen. I mean, if you want to watch that happen, you can watch it happen on YouTube.
Yeah, all the time. I was gonna say this. YouTube was very much on my mind.
Because some people make a career out of pointing out the stupid, right? They
Yeah,
make a career out of pwning
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Pwn, I pwned them, right? I mean, but that in turn draws them down. I mean, Nietzsche's, this is Nietzsche's warning to these people that they will be brought down in the struggle against this, the ugly and the bad. And if you want to see it happen, go subscribe to some other channels that are obsessed with this. I mean, some very good people actually have been destroyed by doing this.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm sad to say.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. Wow, I really like this theme that you dug out of this thing.
Yeah, it kind of, I don't know, just the how it reverberates against Hoffer, like how like, so when you got this, when you're unable to incorporate these parts of yourself, when you're unable to, like on a large scale, on a societal scale, or even on a scale inside the person, when you're unable to incorporate things, you kind of fall into this self-hatred maybe, or in this, I don't know, I kind of think it fits in with what Hoffer was talking about, and especially in the sections about fanaticism, right? How you can no longer get self-worth from you, right? You're damaged, you're poisoned, right? So you reach out and you say, I'm a German, or I'm an American, or I'm a Christian, right? You reach out for these abstract entities to buffer your self-worth because as an individual, you can no longer attain it. I think, I don't know, I really think Hoffer and Nietzsche were seeing the same thing. Like Nietzsche had these sections in here where he talked about like, why was Goethe so great? or the only worthy German is a German who's no longer a German,
Yeah.
right? The only useful German is a German who's not a German. You know what I mean? Who's not aiming to be a German. Like,
Yeah.
why was Goethe so great? Because he wasn't a writer. Goethe's greatness came from a kind of error. I think Nietzsche thought, like Goethe thought he was going to be some scientist and guy, all around guy, but you know, but that error, the fact that he wasn't going to be a writer, is what actually propelled him to something even greater. But like what happens when you cannot incorporate these facets to your personality is you reach out to these abstract limiting structures like a German, a Christian. And I think this is like Nietzsche's trying to trace this back to like the fettered spirit. Like how does one get into this partly how does one blocked from becoming a free spirit? How does one lock oneself into becoming a fettered spirit? You lock yourself into it by this inability to come to terms with who you are.
Yeah, I mean, he mentions a similar thing among the Greeks, right? And he talks about the Greeks in 220 and 221 a little bit. But I mean, he does mention that, like, when this is another theme that runs in here, that whatever comes to be has to be made, right? That the Greeks didn't come into being already profound and logical, right? And he goes right out of his way to say, well, that was the exception. Those are the exceptional Greeks, the ones that didn't slide back into superstition and anger and pettiness. In the same way that, I don't know, whatever burst forth out of Germany at the time, it was Goethe was the person that was able to supersede all of that. That's why he's exceptional. Otherwise, he'd have just been one other guy in Germany. I like that because in passage, when he talks about culture here, the 184, how the natural history of the world should be narrated.
Yeah.
This is one of the big themes that is running through this book is, well, he wants to ask a question, I think. In the new world without God, how should we be educating man? What kind of a culture can we build? And how should we tell the story about it? And this is he says right out here, natural history as the history of the war of the spiritual moral forces against fear, imaginings, inertia, superstition, folly, and their victory over them. So I guess for Nietzsche, the young and the people of culture should be, or children and everyone in a culture should be solely educated to throw away all their false superstitions about, I don't know, even per se being a German or something, or whatever German is, and throwing that away into the darkness of superstition and becoming basically who they really are in a certain way. I enjoyed it.
I like that too, and like it fits in because later in the second half here he talks about the party man, right? The man who joins a party, and this really fits in. He's not a guy having a party.
No,
It really fits in. It really fits in with this theme, though.
he's not having a
The
Nazi
party,
party.
the Nazi party, the party man is this guy, right? This guy who refuses to see this stuff, like, and you know, it's just in a way, in a really strange way. If you want to see this happening like now, just go like I torture myself. We were talking about this earlier before we went online, but I torture myself by going to some of these Reddit subreddits. Like one is called "That Happened," right? And all they post on That Happened are these pictures, like these stupid pictures that go around Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr of people writing stories that are obviously false, obviously didn't happen, but you want them to have happened. They feel like they should have happened, right? Like there's this, you know, and people tell them as though they happened, right? Like we talked about before. Like there was this picture of this girl. She said like, "There's this guy bugging me today, so I punched him in the face," and she had like red on her knuckles, which she obviously just drew on, right? Yeah, stick it to him, right? You know what I mean? Like you want to believe this stuff. Or there's another subreddit called "Forwards from Grandma." Right. And it's all this stupid crap. Like there was an atheist liberal professor, philosophy professor, and then a student stood up and said, you know, "You don't believe in God exists." You know, like all this stupid crap people want to believe. Right. It's this mentality right here, right in front of you. If you want to see like pages and pages and pages of it, just visit Reddit.
Yes.
So I thought like this, and I kind of went on the same topic. I thought there was really great section in this one. I didn't write it down, sorry, but there's one where he says, "What is genius?" It's close to the end. Genius is like finding a goal and then also willing the means to that goal, right? Whereas doesn't that really interestingly ring well with what Hoffer talked about too? How like people who are fanatics, people who joined mass movements, people who leave themselves behind because they've given up on their self-worth. They kind of are in waiting of this future that's somehow going to come, but they're not sure how, right? But it's close. It's close, and it's coming. You know, in section 6 of The True Believer. I was going through this book a lot too. He says. He talks about for men to plunge headlong into an undertaking of vast change, they must be intensely discontented yet not destitute. They must have the feeling of the possession of some potent doctrine, some infallible leader, some new technique, blah, 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 blah. And he says, finally, they must be wholly ignorant of the difficulties involved in their vast undertaking. Experience is a handicap. The men who started the French Revolution were wholly without political experience. The same is true of the Bolsheviks, Nazis, and the revolutionaries. In Asia, the experienced man of affairs is a late comer. He enters the movement when it's already a growing concern. It's interesting, like the method to it. I think Nietzsche wants to throw this in here too. Like, it's not gonna be some, I don't know, magical change. It's you are going to have to literally put these two parts together, or these multiple parts of yourself together to get there, right? So you're going to have to get your hands a little dirty in the evil. You're going to have to start messing with the evil inside of you in order to get this stuff done.
Yeah, and in a similar way, like just running off to the idea that the Greeks and other people had to build up their culture to this level of height, this perfection, right? It didn't all fall on them, right? I don't know. It kind of reminded me a little bit about how this. I don't know. It almost feels like Ortega's mass man here is he doesn't know what made his culture great, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't know what made Goethe great or something, right? So he's more than willing to sabotage the very foundations of that. In other words, he's willing to be a fanatic supporter of Goethe or something, as crazy as that might sound, right? In other words, he
Yeah.
doesn't understand the fundamentals of what this man was and who he was. So he'll undercut it just to get a taste of that sweet, sweet identity juice that's up there with being a, I don't know, Goethe fan. I don't know if that weighs much with the kids these days,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
oh, whatever, you know, nationalism, you can pick your pick, an American or a German or something. Um, it, but unbeknownst to them, that wasn't what made them great in the first place.
Yeah. Yes.
Undercutting the very foundations for it. And he does another passage about that too, about how the worship of powerful figures can get in the way of understanding what kind of people they were, right? Because we see them backwards. Or like when you look at the founding fathers, the way that the Republicans worship them as in like their holy books or something. But
Yeah, yeah.
like these people were rebels against the government that ruled over them. I mean, the spirit of who they were doesn't live on in the way that the Republicans remember them, right? In the same way that, strangely, the spirit of Jesus doesn't live in the same way that they remember Jesus as the strict, authoritarian, unforgiving people that some of them tend to be, not everyone, some of them tend to be, doesn't seem to really latch on to the spirit of what Jesus Christ was trying to do. Love him or hate him.
Yeah. And again, on that theme, I thought like one thing we didn't mention last time, but it was in the first section. I really like this this one too, 137. It's a section called "The Worst Readers." Nietzsche says, "The worst readers are those who behave like plundering troops. They take away a few things they can use, dirty and confound the remainder, and revile the whole." Right? Yeah, I get it. Like he's saying like kind of this work itself, right? If you're just going to walk in and just take a couple things you like without seeing how all this works together, you're going to miss. You're going to miss it. You're going to miss it. You're like that guy who sits down and plays Spec Ops and you're like, well, yeah, I killed a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of, doesn't that kind of working with the passage about how metaphysicians kind of make a mistake when they overgeneralize?
Yeah.
Isolated propositions, right? In the same sense as that if you were to take a section or one small portion of Nietzsche's book and then, I don't know, overgeneralize it to say something it doesn't, like what the Nazis did to Nietzsche himself.
Yeah. I did like, I mean, it seemed like this thing that flowed to the end to this theme, like of how do you escape this? It's to be more than yourself, right? Or more than yourself, kind of like not be a German. Kind of, it ended on, for me, it kind of flowed into this kind of view of liberation, of becoming a free spirit again. So that's why I don't know, when I got to the end, I was like, wow, yeah, this really is, we're still in this kind of focus on how does one become a free spirit. I mean, you could take it a lot of places. How does one, I mean, if we take it more modern, how does one escape fanaticism? How does one liberate one's mind from mass movements, or even like, I mean, this is straight up this guy's alley too. I mean, this is straight the kind of territory Walter Kaufman was investigating in Without Guilt and Justice. How is one able to make fateful decisions in one's life? How is one able to actually gain control of one's life? I think this is like hardcore territory that Nietzsche's working in Human Ulti Human.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening here, in the biggest possible picture, right? That's why all this movement is going on. That's why these are travel books. All this kind of, we talks about walking among fanatics and playing with ideas, and I mean he'll even suggest things like, and there's a lot of suggestions here, like, you know, don't even be serious all the time.
Yeah,
he suggests, he's like, well, to a serious man. As a man that plays with serious ideas all day, even trivialities can be interesting.
Yeah.
Because, and the only reason why they are interesting is because they're another thing, right? They're not his main dish, right? So the man that plays with big ideas can find these trivial ideas fun and interesting for a while, in the same way that he talks about how going among society can be kind of a joyous thing too sometimes, not a tiring thing if you've got all these other aspects of yourself away from it, right? That if you incorporate it into a whole, even the most painful things to you can be a kind of a delightful spice, if used correctly in the right amount.
Yeah.
It's a vision of a life, a kind of life.
I mean, and this like kind of this Nietzsche here, like at this time in his life, he really put up like knowledge, like even the pursuit of knowledge as something that could almost redeem a lot of aspects of life. This pursuing knowledge in all areas of the world, and then you using that to be able to, to bring some good, to put everything in its place, if you will, to find an outlet for some of your lower desires, but still keep them around. So there's definitely a theme of that running through this too.
I really like the parts where he talked about learning history and self-knowledge. What sections were those? I should have these up right now. All right, I'm going to get to those later, but I want to know what you think of passage 197.
197.
It's called "That Which Unites and That Which Divides." It's interesting. It's kind of playing with you a little bit, but the passage just reads: "Does that which unites men, their understanding of what constitutes their common advantage and disadvantage, not lie in the head? And that which divides them, their blind groping and selectivity in love and hatred, their preference for one at the expense of all others, and contempt for the general well-being that arises from it, not lie in the heart?" So, again, he's being a little contrarian here.
I know. I read this and I was like, I like this one a lot because he was being contrarian on purpose. I think he's trying to be provocative in this sense. You could feel he's trying to be provocative here. He's trying to say like, because there's a running attack on this kind of real romanticized view of reality, of like the heart, like, we're all connected in the heart, and we just got to feel good. We just got to reach down into our pure inner feelings, and then we can come together and have this empathetic party, right? And I like this. That's why I like this one a lot, because you know what? Sometimes it takes work to understand people, especially in a society like ours and in like a modern democracy. Sometimes you have to try to understand the other. You really have to like literally try to understand them. When you approach them, it's gonna be ew, right? Yeah. But hopefully you can use your brain power a little bit here and overcome some of these barriers your feelings are putting up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the old divide here usually is that like liberals are like go with your heart, man. That's why they call them bleeding hearts, and the conservatives are kind of like go with your head or something. But I don't know. I really like this because it feels like Nietzsche's throwing a monkey wrench in the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think the big mistake here is just assuming that one is without the other in the first place. That there is a heart without a mind and a mind without a heart. I mean, for example, find your average bigot on YouTube that says, "I hate gays." Okay, well, we can argue all you like about where that comes from. Is that from his heart or from his head? Well, the answer is both, I think, right? I mean, if you want to go all psychological, maybe you could easily argue that all he's doing is justifying his ew feeling with a bunch of crap. Basically, oh, I read this in the Bible, or two men can't make children, or blah 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 blah. But all it is it's a bunch of rationale to justify his ew feeling, right? I mean, that's in a lot of the recent psychology, that seems to be more prevalent than ever. Is there's been a vast undercutting of, I don't know how far I agree with this, the power of reason, but in a strange way, it seems to be very anti-romantic in the very least.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. You can question how far you can agree with like Jonathan Haidt and his obsession with moral dumbfounding and stuff like that. But I mean, there's something to it at the very least. Some people really are morally dumbfounded when you present them with, like, why is it you? And they really do have nothing, really.
I mean, but of course there are distinctions that are, I don't know, educated into you, if you will. National distinctions, for example, the French and the Germans. I mean, ethnically, they're very similar, if not the same race, well, I guess, if you want to say that. But I mean, just from a glance, you can't tell the French and the Germans apart, really. And that kind of distinction, it comes from an education, but in the same way that also comes from the heart. It comes from a damaged heart, right? A damaged heart that wants to prove itself better than someone, or someone that doesn't feel comfortable with themselves, like you were talking about before, right? That feels like they're not good enough, or they're not high enough on the social scale, or any way to preserve their sense of self. They'll come up with some kind of rationale to do it. So I don't know. I mean, like, you could really throw a monkey wrench in all this head heart thing, but I don't know. I kind of like what Nietzsche's doing here. I mean, as a man that's trying to introduce psychology into philosophy, I could see him throwing this kind of monkey wrench in the thing and saying, well, you know, it's just as true that you're just justifying your prejudices of your heart, which is what's really going on here. And maybe what we really need is a more scientific man. Maybe that's what we need is, I don't know, Plato's Republic, a rational place to, maybe not Plato's Republic, but a republic that can actually put us in situations that can educate us and make us aware of the dangers of, I don't know, a heart that loves candy and a heart that hates, or a bigoted heart. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, wow. I'm just surprised you said that. I love that, because one of the ones that stuck out to me was 364, where he says,
I like that one.
He who prefers the beautiful in life to the useful will, like a child who prefers sweets to bread, certainly end by ruining his digestion and will look out on the world very ill-humoredly. Like candy. I just like candy. I just like candy.
Yes.
So there you go. There it is. Love is an open door.
Love is an open door.
Kind of. Nietzsche's got something a little bit different going on, but I just thought I'd throw that in there.
It depends on the heart, I guess.
Yeah.
It really depends on the heart and the ideas with that heart. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how far I'm willing to go with, like, the heart dominates everything, because your ideas do affect that too.
Yeah. So. I mean, like, even like, okay, so you have moral dumbfounding. It just still doesn't explain what is this need for moral rationalization? Where moral rationalization come from? Like,
right.
Why would we even need a rationalization then? What is that propping up? Reason is working here somewhere. There's providing justifications, providing grounds, things like this.
It seems like just the error is that there is one without the other.
Yeah.
That reason, the assumption that reason is not propped up at times by emotion, and emotion is not propped up by reason.
Yeah.
They both prop each other up. They both support each other in a structure. I don't know. It seems like that's kind of what Nietzsche's doing in this book. He's throwing monkey wrenches in there. Yeah. Saying, look, this is what's happening. Don't you see? Behind all these things, there's other emotions and other forces at work.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. And I did like, just as a really small note, because I think I'm pretty good. Just as a small note, though, it did remind me, like, I'm glad you brought up Ortega and the Masked Man. It did remind me of the Masked Man in the sense that, remember we talked about in our video, like, how the Masked Man is illiberal, like in Ortega's definition of liberalism, which was like a liberal is one who's willing to live together with people who think unlike him, especially when they're in the weaker position, right? So it seems like this person would be like the mass man who was just unwilling to live with someone like them, to just push them out the door. You're out. I can't. You have to be like us, otherwise, or like a man, or like the group, or whatever. Otherwise, get out. You're a weirdo. All these things really did fit together real nicely. I think Human to Human is just, you could just set it right next to Revolt of the Masses and The True Believer, and get a really interesting a bit of thoughts out of all of them in combination. Oh, and of course Kaufman too. But
yeah, I mean, I'd be interested too as to where you could take this right into reality, though. Like these ideas that, I mean, these frankly, I don't know, dangerous ideas that you have to respect the evil, respect the darkness of the human heart in a certain way, but give it a place.
Yeah, I mean, he says, I really liked what he said in the section about what the Greeks did. That was in 220. He said the Greeks gave it a second rank. Right? So he's definitely not saying like just go crazy, murder people. But I mean, I'm assuming he's saying things, like art and Olympic Games and sublimating this stuff into sports and play.
I mean, to put it in a weird way, I mean, could you say that there is a place for 4chan?
Yes. I think definitely there's a place for 4chan. I guess the problem is sometimes 4chan leaks. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like,
but
right. I mean, like, this is where, like, the vision of the people that want to quote unquote clean up gaming or clean up the internet. I mean, I get it, because 4chan shouldn't be like the front page of the internet.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I get Nietzsche's point if you were to say there's a place for 4chan.
Yeah.
It's not the front page, though.
Definitely not.
It's nowhere close to the front page. But there's a place for the evil, if you will. I don't know if I call 4chan evil as much as it's just a bunch of repetitive nothing. But, you know what I'm trying to say.
Like what Plato would call like private spaces. Remember, Plato was all up in arms against those private spaces where who knows what's going on.
Yeah, those crazy private spaces where we can't control what's happening. Oh no, gonna eliminate those. I don't know, but I don't know. I really, this is where I honestly feel a lot of sympathy with this viewpoint of Nietzsche's, that like. I get when people are trying to say like we need to eliminate, I don't know, X from society, like whatever evil it may be, I don't know, racism, sexism, bigotry, all of this stuff. But when they cross that line and say, well, we're just going to ban it off of everything, we're going to just eliminate it. I don't know. Not that I say I want 4chan to be spouting bigotry, but I don't know. Is there a place for that darkness? Is there a place that can contain that darkness? I don't know if 4chan is the best metaphor for this, but I mean, is there a way we can play with it better, or we can utilize it? I mean, it's great if it's a little more spiritualized, like in art or games or something. For example, I don't know, maybe even in a kind of a Spec Ops kind of way. Where, where like the violence of Spec Ops is taken and then you're shown in the mirror what that violence really is, and things like that. But I don't know, to say like, well, we want a world of video games without violence seems like a naive thing to me to say.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's a lot you could do.
Not really stepping on a limb here, though. I mean, it's pretty. But anyway,
it's just yeah. I mean, it would be. Yeah, it just depends on how much you want to push it. It'd be like saying like, well, I fear violence, so there are no more teams. We're gonna eliminate even teams, like the red team and the blue team. Oh, cool. But MatPat has a different reason for that. But we're gonna just eliminate even teams, like, which is like really sublimated. Like you could say, well, that's the roots of racism. teams. Like they found out with recent scientific research that, races are just a fill-in. They're just a fill-in, right? They could have been teams or shirt colors, and we gotta nip this in the bud. So even teams, even the red team and the blue team, that's not enough. I think we might run into problems if we went that far. I mean, like, because the red team and the blue team seems like a really interesting sublimation of that. You know what I mean? Like, if you're just putting on the jersey for a day and having a fun competition, it seems like that could lead to something more. You know what I mean? Like, it could actually lead you to do better things. Like, this is linking this back into the first volume about like evil and good being more linked than people think anyway. Right. So like when Picard gets his knifed by the Nausicaans in Damjat, right? Picard was an arrogant kid, but you know what? Picard got knifed because and he was an arrogant kid, but he became Captain of the Enterprise. So there.
Right. I mean, part of that was what made him the person that he was.
Exactly.
I mean, like, do you want to get rid of that? And again, this is where it's a vague thing. And how much do we argue? I mean, where do we put the lid on censorship, and where do we push this stuff out? And how do we contain the evil? Do we throw it all on 4chan and hope for the best, or whatever, I don't know, place out of the way, or throw into the deep web and hope for the best? Whatever that is, I don't know. I'm just worried about the thinness of some critique these days, and the inability to see that, I don't know, these dark desires are within them too, like, and they like seeing the villains themselves too, right? Like little kids enjoy looking at Darth Vader, and that shouldn't scare you, right? That they wanted to be Darth Vader too. Because maybe the one day that will be sublimated into something bigger and better, and you shouldn't squash that dream.
Yeah. On that note, like, I was thinking as I was reading this section too, and I thought, like, it almost felt like too, like one of the points Nietzsche was talking about, like how we talked about how like being more than yourself, incorporating this, like, and going beyond. And it almost felt like, this. Call me crazy, but it almost seems like this is something George Lucas just couldn't get, right? He's kind of like, well, okay, I'm going to make some prequels, and I really want kids to be in on this. So, okay, I want kids to watch, so I'm going to put a little kid in it. Because kids like kids. You know what I mean? Like, totally missing the thing, which is kids want to be Han Solo, right? Kids don't want to be a stupid kid, right? The kid wants to be Luke Skywalker, right? It's a total misunderstanding of what's going on here. He doesn't want to just limit himself to being a stupid kid.
I mean, in a funny way, that critique works against the entire prequel trilogy, not just Anakin, right? I mean, the prequel trilogy wanted to be Star Wars.
Yes.
The original Star Wars trilogy didn't want to be Star Wars. It didn't exist. Yeah. Right? And it was an open exploration. It was a free play of the universe. By the time he'd gotten so old, he was like, "No, I just want this to be Star Wars." And it never overcame itself. It was trapped in its own universe. I don't know, headcanons galore, right? I mean, but it never challenged anybody. It never jumped out of its universe. It didn't do anything interesting or new. He kind of limited himself when he did this, but that was his ultimate flaw.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know we've made like lots of Spec Ops references this week. It's a Spec Ops reference week, but like, thank God Spec Ops didn't try to be Spec Ops. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't look back to the previous series and say, I want to be like that. We would have lost just a work of art in game form if it had tried to do something stupid like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the same way Mario 2, I guess in the American version, didn't do that too. Things like this, and that ability to keep, I don't know, the ability to overcome yourself and to be something, to step outside of who you are, that comes with leaving behind, I don't know, little bits of non-incorporated evil or something, whatever you want to call it, non-incorporated something inside your soul, whatever chaos inside of yourself to have a dancing star or whatever. Like, you need that inside to be able to break free, don't you? And in the same way, like, I don't know, maybe Kierkegaard would agree here. He'd say, well,
that's kind of where I want to take this. Yeah,
you know, if you want to make that jump outside of the societal system, how are you going to do that if all that's inside of you is a bunch of ideology that conforms directly to a monstrous system? You ain't going to be jumping out and creating new galaxies and universes by doing that, are you? Because it's all been prefabricated and formed. It's not possible. So there's an ultimate danger here.
Yeah, yeah, like that's why we have to sit before the negative.
Yeah.
Just sit in front of the negative.
Yes, that's right. Good
thing we had Socrates, that infinite absolute negativity.
Well, if we needed to jumpstart our way into new universes, so I don't know if all that seems to tie into this book. I don't know. Really special book. I think this is.
Yeah. Highly. Of course, I mean it's Nietzsche, but.
Yeah.
Human to Human, highly recommend. Even Assorted, this the second part, the volume 2, the Assorted Opinions and Maxims.
Yeah.
But I think for now, I don't know. That's all I really want to talk about for now. I'm pretty good. I think I'm done. I'm going to come back to this book again later, maybe, and see. Maybe I might put something together related to it. So.
Yeah. I'm glad we got to do some kind of modern speculation here. I thought this is a great book. I liked it even more than I thought, which is amazing because I already like Nietzsche, but it's just amazing how good this really is. I like the last section when he talks about.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
Sent into Hades. He makes several references about going into hell.
Yeah,
it's weird. Like he starts talking about going under and going into hell. I love that prayer to men, though. Prayer to men, 405. Forgive us our virtues. That is how one should pray to men.
Yeah.
Makes you think of all very nasty things when I think of that. But this descent into Hades, he kind of gives us. I don't know why, but he in the last he tells us his kind of best 8. He's got his top 8 list, like a YouTube top 10 list. It's interesting who he's constantly picking up, right? Epicurus, Montaigne, Goethe, Spinoza, Plato, Rousseau, Pascal, Schopenhauer. These are his best 8 at this time.
Yeah.
Interesting, at the very least. Good list. Maybe something to pick up later.
Yeah, definitely. I'm surprised Voltaire wasn't on there. Huh.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised by the list too. I'm surprised Plato made it on there.
Yeah. I mean, Plato got even mentions in volume 1 too.
Yeah.
He's thinking about Plato.
Yeah.
He's thinking about Plato. But I think it's true on the list. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
He's always ragging on Plato. I don't like Plato. He's boring. He made so many mistakes. But then again, I don't know. I like Plato. Nietzsche, he's got a very hostile. At times, he can be hostile. I'm just surprised he's on the list.
That's just, for all his ragging on Socrates, he likes Socrates a lot. I think Nietzsche kind of liked Plato. I really do. In his heart of hearts, he's like, yeah, Plato was a cool guy.
Okay, yeah. It's like when people rag on, I don't know, TV shows they like. But when it gets right down to it.
Yeah.
They like it.
He's like, yeah, he screwed up a lot of episodes, but that was a really good show. That Plato show.
It's why you nitpick Star Trek and stuff, right? You don't like it. I don't know. It was just interesting to see his top 8 list at the end. Excellent book. Highly recommended.
Definitely.
We've just touched on a minor portion of the interweaving.
I know. There's so much more we could do with this. It just seems a little bit overwhelming now. So I think I'm pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty good too. Maybe we'll come back to this again later. There's still another section of this book, The Wonder in His Shadow. So no one will get to that, but all right. I'm pretty good with this, and maybe we'll do something with this again later.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. What do you give this book? What's your rating?
I give it 10 Nietzsches out of 10.
10 Nietzsches out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah, I give it a Nietzsche out of Nietzsche. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So we're both the same.
I went for the whole holistic thing.
You went for the holistic thing. I went for the divided self. They're little 10 little Nietzsches.
Okay. All right. So I know this fantastic book. So
Yeah.
pick it up, and we'll see you, our loyal fan, if you're out there. And we'll see you again next time for. We're not quite sure yet. We'll decide on that next. See ya.